My fiancé cheated at her bachelorette party, but what I discovered next was much worse. Hey Reddit, I've been holding on to this story for a while now, and it's finally time to get it off my chest. It's a story that completely turned my life upside down and made me question everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and trust. To fully understand how things unraveled so dramatically, let me start from the beginning. I've always been someone who values loyalty above everything else. Growing up, my parents had one of those solid, enduring relationships that made me believe in soulmates. Sure, they fought sometimes, but at their core, they were a team. They set a high standard for what I thought love should look like. So when I met Emily, I thought I'd finally found my person, the one I'd spend the rest of my life with. Emily was magnetic. She had this infectious laugh and a way of making every moment feel special. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party, and the connection was instant. Within weeks, we were inseparable. She seemed perfect, kind, ambitious, and someone who genuinely made me want to be better. For 2 years, our relationship felt like a fairy tale. We traveled together, supported each other's careers, and started talking about the future. When I proposed to her on a snowy December evening, it felt like the natural next step. Her tearful yes was the happiest moment of my life. The months leading up to the wedding were a whirlwind of planning. Emily threw herself into every detail, obsessing over flowers, colors, and invitations. I stayed out of the way, happy to see her so excited about our big day. To me, everything seemed perfect. But looking back, I now realize that perfection was a facade, one I was too blind to see through. Emily's bachelorette party was where it all started to unravel. Her close group of friends had planned a weekend in Vegas, lavish dinners, poolside relaxation, and nights out on the strip. It was exactly the kind of celebration Emily loved, and I didn't think twice about it. I wanted her to have fun, to enjoy the experience with her best friends. She assured me it was all harmless, just a chance to blow off some steam before the wedding. I trusted her completely. The weekend of the party, Emily sent me photos and texts showing her and her friends having fun, dressed up for a night out, lounging by the pool, and enjoying drinks at some fancy rooftop bar. Everything seemed normal. Until it wasn't. Late on the second night, I got a message from Rachel, one of Emily's closest friends. Rachel and I were particularly close, so seeing her name pop up on my phone immediately caught my attention. The text was short and cryptic, "You need to know what's going on." My stomach sank. I tried calling her, but she didn't answer. Instead, she sent a follow-up text, "Check your email. I sent you something important." I rushed to my laptop, my hands shaking as I opened my inbox. Sure enough, there was an email from Rachel with a folder attached. The subject line simply read, "I'm sorry." What I saw made my blood run cold. The folder contained a series of photos and videos. At first, they seemed innocent enough, Emily and her friends at a club, surrounded by a group of guys. But as I scrolled through the pictures, they became increasingly damning. Emily sitting on a guy's lap, his hand on her waist. Emily laughing as he leaned in to whisper something in her ear. And then, the final blow, Emily kissing him, her arms wrapped around his neck. But the worst part wasn't the photos. It was the video. In shaky, low-quality footage, Emily and the same guy were in a hotel room. The camera angle didn't capture everything, but it didn't need to. The intimacy was undeniable. My heart pounded as I replayed the video, hoping I'd somehow misinterpreted what I was seeing. But there was no room for doubt. The woman I was about to marry, the person I had built my life around, had betrayed me in the most humiliating way possible. For hours, I sat there in stunned silence, staring at the screen. My mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? Was this just a one-time mistake, or was there more I didn't know about? Every memory I had of our relationship suddenly felt tainted, like I couldn't trust anything anymore. But what hit me hardest wasn't just the betrayal, it was the audacity of it. She hadn't just cheated. She'd done it during her bachelorette party, surrounded by people who were supposed to be celebrating our love. I didn't call her. I didn't text her. I didn't ask her to explain. Instead, I made a decision that felt both empowering and terrifying. The next morning, while Emily and her friends were still in Vegas, I packed my essentials, left the engagement ring on the nightstand, and walked out of the apartment we shared. I didn't leave a note. I didn't leave a single word of explanation. I didn't owe her that. I moved into a friend's spare room temporarily, ignoring Emily's calls and texts when she returned. She must have figured something was wrong when she saw the empty apartment and the ring I'd left behind, but I didn't care. At first, I thought that would be the end of it. I'd leave her, move on with my life, and let her deal with the fallout. But things weren't that simple. The next week, I started getting messages from her friends. Some were apologetic, saying they had no idea what Emily had done. Others were defensive, accusing me of being overdramatic and saying it was just a harmless mistake. But then there were the messages from Emily herself. She tried everything, pleading, apologizing, even claiming she didn't remember what happened. But it was her final message that stopped me cold. "There's something I need to tell you. It's not what you think." Her words left me reeling. Not what I think. What was there to think? I'd seen the evidence with my own eyes. Unless she was about to admit to something even worse, I couldn't imagine what she could possibly say to justify her actions. But part of me was curious. Part of me needed to know the full story, even if it destroyed me. I decided to meet with her, one final time, to hear what she had to say. I wasn't sure what I expected when I agreed to meet Emily. Part of me wanted answers, a way to make sense of her betrayal. Another part of me just wanted closure, to put an end to the chapter of my life that had been shattered so violently. Either way, I knew one thing for certain: there was no coming back from this. We met at a coffee shop near the apartment we used to share. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with her hands clasped tightly around a cup of tea. She looked different, tired, nervous, and unlike the confident, radiant woman I had fallen in love with. As I sat down across from her, the air between us felt heavy. She started talking immediately, her voice trembling as she tried to explain herself. She admitted to everything. The photos, the videos, the guy in the hotel room, it all happened, and there was no denying it. But then she said something that caught me completely off guard. It wasn't what it looked like. Her explanation unraveled quickly, and the story she told made my head spin. According to her, she hadn't planned any of it. The guy at the club wasn't some random stranger, he was an ex, someone she had dated briefly before we met. She hadn't seen him in years, but somehow, he had shown up in Vegas at the same club where she and her friends were celebrating. At first, she claimed their interactions were innocent. She said he approached her, wanting to catch up, and that she didn't think much of it. But as the night went on, things started to blur. She admitted to drinking too much, to letting her guard down in ways she shouldn't have. But then came the twist. She insisted that she didn't remember what happened in the hotel room. She swore she couldn't recall how she ended up there, only that she woke up the next morning confused and ashamed. She claimed her friends hadn't told her anything, that they had tried to protect her by pretending it never happened. I sat there, trying to process her words. On the surface, it sounded like she was trying to excuse herself, to paint herself as a victim of bad decisions and circumstance. But something about her story didn't add up. If she truly didn't remember, why had her friend Rachel sent me the photos and videos? Why had Rachel gone out of her way to expose Emily's actions if it was just a misunderstanding? I pressed her on this point, and her response sent chills down my spine. Rachel, she explained, had a reason for sending me those files. She and Rachel had a falling out months earlier, a simmering feud over something I hadn't been privy to. Emily claimed Rachel had been looking for a way to get back at her, to humiliate her, and the events in Vegas gave her the perfect opportunity. The photos and videos, Emily said, were Rachel's way of weaponizing a moment of weakness. She insisted that Rachel had made things look worse than they were, that the narrative I had been shown wasn't the full truth. But here's the thing, I didn't believe her. Maybe some of what she said was true. Maybe Rachel did have ulterior motives. Maybe Emily didn't remember every detail of that night. But none of that changed the fact that she had crossed a line, one that couldn't be uncrossed. As she spoke, I felt a strange sense of detachment, like I was watching the conversation from outside my own body. Her words barely registered anymore. I realized it didn't matter whether her story was true or not. The trust we had built, the foundation of our relationship, was gone. I told her as much. Her reaction was a mix of desperation and anger. She begged me to reconsider, to let her prove herself, to give her a second chance. But when she realized I wasn't budging, her tone shifted. She accused me of overreacting, of not being willing to fight for our relationship. That was the moment I knew I had made the right decision. I left the coffee shop without looking back. I didn't need to hear any more excuses or explanations. Emily had made her choices, and I was making mine. But what I didn't realize was that this wasn't the end. The fallout from our breakup spread quickly. Word got out among our friends, and the story took on a life of its own. Some people sided with me, saying I had every right to leave after what she had done. Others, including a few of her closest friends, defended her, claiming I had been too harsh. The tension escalated when Rachel reached out to me again. She sent me another email, this time with more context. In her message, she confirmed that she and Emily had been at odds for a while, but she insisted that her decision to expose what happened in Vegas wasn't out of spite. She claimed that Emily had a history of crossing boundaries, of making questionable decisions and brushing them off as harmless. Rachel said she felt obligated to tell me the truth, even if it cost her a friendship. Attached to the email was something I hadn't expected, a screenshot of a text exchange between Emily and the guy from the club. The messages painted a very different picture than the one Emily had tried to sell me. They weren't the messages of someone who didn't remember what happened, they were flirtatious, suggestive, and full of inside jokes that suggested a deeper connection. Emily hadn't just made a mistake. She had been lying to me the entire time. Rachel's email was the confirmation I didn't know I needed. The screenshot of Emily's texts with the guy from the club painted a damning picture, one that shattered any lingering doubts I might have had. Emily hadn't just cheated, she had lied, manipulated, and tried to rewrite the narrative to paint herself as the victim. The messages were flirty and casual, filled with references to inside jokes and shared memories. There were no signs of regret, no indication that what had happened in Vegas was a one-time lapse in judgment. It was clear they had a history, and it wasn't as distant as Emily had led me to believe. The realization hit me like a wave. I hadn't just been betrayed, I had been played. I forwarded the email to a few mutual friends who had been vocal about defending Emily after the breakup. I didn't add any commentary or explanation. The screenshots spoke for themselves. The fallout was immediate. People who had initially sided with Emily started reaching out to me, apologizing for doubting my decision to walk away. The group chats, once buzzing with speculation, went eerily quiet. It seemed like everyone was trying to process the same thing, that Emily wasn't who they thought she was. But while the support from some friends was validating, it didn't undo the damage. My life had been turned upside down, and everywhere I went, I felt like I was carrying the weight of what had happened. The wedding plans were cancelled, the vendors were notified, and the deposits were lost. The apartment we shared was now just a painful reminder of what I thought we had. Then, things took an unexpected turn. One evening, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. It was the guy from the Vegas photos, the one Emily had cheated with. His tone was hesitant, almost apologetic, as he introduced himself. He said he had seen the fallout from Vegas online, specifically the photos and texts that Rachel had shared. He claimed he hadn't known Emily was engaged when they reconnected and that if he had, he never would have gone along with it. I didn't know whether to believe him or not, but what he said next changed everything. He admitted that Emily had been the one to initiate their interactions in Vegas. She had sought him out at the club, made the first move, and escalated things from there. According to him, she had spun a story about being in an unhappy relationship, about feeling trapped and needing a break from her life. It was like a dagger to the heart. Not only had she betrayed me, but she had painted me as the villain to justify her actions. The conversation ended with him apologizing again and offering to share their full text exchange if I wanted it. I declined. I didn't need any more proof of her betrayal, I had already seen enough. But his call left me with more questions than answers. How many other lies had she told? How much of our relationship had been based on falsehoods? As I tried to piece everything together, I found myself spiraling into a rabbit hole of doubt and introspection. I started replaying moments from our relationship, questioning every interaction and wondering what had been real. Then, one night, I found something that stopped me cold. While packing up the last of my things from the apartment, I stumbled across Emily's old laptop. She had left it behind in her rush to move out, and I hadn't thought much of it until now. On a whim, I decided to check it for anything that might explain her actions. What I found was worse than I could have imagined. Buried in her email drafts was a message she had written to Rachel weeks before the Vegas trip. In it, she vented about feeling bored in our relationship, about how the excitement had faded and how she missed the thrill of her single days. She wrote about reconnecting with her ex, about how he made her feel alive in a way I didn't anymore. But the most damning part of the email was her admission that she didn't think she would ever go through with the wedding. She had planned to keep up the charade until she figured out what to do next. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling like the air had been sucked out of the room. Emily had never intended to marry me. She had been using me as a placeholder, someone to keep her grounded while she entertained fantasies of a different life. The betrayal was complete. I copied the email and sent it to Rachel, along with a message thanking her for exposing the truth. If it hadn't been for her, I might never have known the full extent of Emily's lies. But even as I hit send, I realized something important: this wasn't about Emily anymore. It was about me, about reclaiming my life and moving forward. I deleted Emily's contact information, blocked her on every platform, and made the decision to leave the city. I needed a fresh start, away from the memories and the people who had been part of this painful chapter. The next few months were hard, but they were also transformative. I threw myself into work, started therapy, and began rebuilding my life one step at a time. Looking back, I realized that Emily's betrayal, as devastating as it was, taught me something invaluable: that trust is fragile, and that the wrong person can take everything you've built and destroy it in an instant. But it also taught me that healing is possible, even after the worst kind of heartbreak. Moving forward after Emily's betrayal wasn't easy. The pain lingered like a wound that refused to heal, and the memories of our time together haunted me in unexpected ways. A song on the radio, a certain smell, even the sight of a white dress in a shop window could send me spiraling back to the moment I discovered the truth. But as hard as it was, I refused to let her actions define me. After sending Rachel the email I found on Emily's laptop, I deleted every trace of Emily from my life. No photos, no messages, no mementos. I even sold the ring I had proposed with, using the money to cover the costs of breaking our lease and moving out of the apartment. It was cathartic, like shedding the weight of a past I no longer wanted to carry. I decided to leave the city. Staying meant constant reminders of Emily, our favorite restaurants, the park where I proposed, the mutual friends who would always bring her up no matter how much I asked them not to. I needed a fresh start. I moved to a smaller town a few hours away, where no one knew my story. It was a quiet, unassuming place, far from the chaos of the life I had left behind. I found a new job, threw myself into work, and started focusing on things I had neglected during my relationship: my hobbies, my health, and my mental well-being. But as I began to rebuild, the fallout from Emily's actions continued to ripple. Rachel kept me updated, though I hadn't asked her to. She told me that Emily had tried to salvage her reputation among our mutual friends, spinning a story about how the Vegas incident had been blown out of proportion. But Rachel, armed with the email and screenshots I had shared, made sure the truth was known. The details of Emily's betrayal spread quickly. Friends who had once defended her turned their backs, disgusted by how she had manipulated and lied to everyone around her. Even her closest confidants began to distance themselves, unwilling to be associated with the mess she had created. But the most unexpected twist came from Emily's ex, the guy from the Vegas photos. Apparently, he had reached out to a few of Emily's friends after our phone call, sharing his side of the story and exposing more of Emily's lies. He revealed that their chance meeting in Vegas hadn't been chance at all. Emily had reached out to him weeks before the trip, inviting him to come to the city and reconnect. The revelation hit our social circle like a bombshell. Emily hadn't just made a mistake, she had planned it. She had orchestrated the entire encounter, knowing full well what she was doing and the damage it would cause. Rachel told me that after this came to light, Emily's life began to unravel. The friends who had stuck by her through the initial fallout abandoned her, leaving her isolated and alone. Her family, who had been so excited for the wedding, were devastated by the truth. Her mother reached out to me at one point, apologizing profusely and asking if there was any chance I could forgive Emily and give her another chance. I told her no. But while it was satisfying to see the truth come out, it didn't make the healing process any easier. Betrayal leaves scars that take time to fade, and there were days when the weight of it all felt unbearable. Therapy helped. For the first time, I had a space to unpack everything, to talk about the betrayal, the doubts, and the lingering anger. My therapist helped me understand that Emily's actions weren't a reflection of my worth, but of her own insecurities and flaws. Slowly, I began to let go of the guilt and self-doubt that had taken root after the breakup. I also started to rebuild my social life, making new friends in my new town who knew me as just Ryan, not the guy whose fiancée cheated. It was liberating to be free of the stigma, to exist without the shadow of my past hanging over me. But the past has a way of creeping back in. A few months after I moved, I got an email from Emily. The subject line simply read, "I'm sorry." I hesitated before opening it, unsure if I even wanted to hear what she had to say. But curiosity got the better of me. The email was long, rambling, and filled with regret. She apologized for everything, for the cheating, the lies, the way she had tried to manipulate the situation to make herself look better. She admitted that she had taken me for granted, that she had let her selfishness ruin something she hadn't realized was so precious until it was gone. But her apology didn't end there. She also revealed something that left me reeling. She had been seeing her ex off and on for months before the Vegas trip. The cheating wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment, it was a pattern of behavior she had hidden from me for nearly half our relationship. Reading her words felt like being punched in the gut all over again. But this time, the pain wasn't as sharp. It wasn't because her actions didn't hurt, they did. It was because I had finally reached a point where I understood that her behavior wasn't my burden to carry. I didn't respond to her email. There was nothing left to say. Instead, I focused on moving forward. I started dating again, cautiously at first, but eventually with more confidence. I met people who reminded me that love doesn't have to hurt, that trust isn't something you should have to question. And somewhere along the way, I found peace. Emily's betrayal had shaken me to my core, but it also taught me the value of self-worth, resilience, and the importance of trusting my instincts. Sometimes, the people you love the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. But their actions don't define you. How you choose to rise from the ashes does. Life after Emily wasn't a clean slate, it was more like a canvas smeared with the remnants of the past, waiting for me to repaint it. Moving forward wasn't a straight path, but it was mine, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was living for myself. Emily's email stayed in my inbox, unopened after that first read. I refused to give it space in my mind. Her admissions about the ongoing affair with her ex stung, but they also solidified one thing: I had made the right decision to walk away. What could have been a lifetime of deception had been cut short before it could take root, and for that, I was grateful. But as much as I tried to leave it all behind, the echoes of the betrayal followed me. The mutual friends we had once shared dwindled to none. Some couldn't handle the fallout, others quietly chose sides, and a few decided to wash their hands of the drama altogether. It was for the best. My new life didn't need the weight of old relationships tied to Emily's shadow. As I settled into my new town, I began piecing together a life that felt lighter, freer. Therapy became a cornerstone of my recovery. My therapist helped me untangle the emotions I had buried under anger, grief, confusion, and a lingering sense of self-doubt. Slowly, I began to accept a hard truth: Emily's betrayal wasn't about me. It wasn't about what I lacked or what I could have done differently. It was about her inability to value what she had, her selfishness, and her need to chase fleeting thrills. With time, I started to feel like myself again. Work became an anchor, a place where I could channel my energy and rebuild my confidence. I took on projects that challenged me, pushing myself in ways I hadn't before. And outside of work, I found joy in the little things: long hikes in the nearby mountains, discovering hidden gems in my new town, and even picking up photography, a hobby I had abandoned years ago. Then came the unexpected twist. About a year after the breakup, I was scrolling through social media when a post caught my eye. It was from Rachel, the friend who had exposed Emily's actions in Vegas. She had moved on from our old circle of friends, too, and now worked as a travel photographer. The post was a photo of a quiet beach at sunset, but it was the caption that made my stomach drop. Sometimes the truth sets you free, but sometimes it comes with a price. Still, I'd do it all over again. Some people don't deserve the lies they've been living in. It was vague, but I knew exactly what she meant. Rachel had been the whistleblower, the person who exposed Emily's lies when no one else would. She had paid a price for it, losing friends, enduring backlash, and being labeled as a troublemaker by people who didn't want to face the truth. I felt a wave of gratitude for her bravery, but it also sparked a question I hadn't considered before. Rachel had sent me the evidence out of the blue, knowing the fallout it would cause. But why? What had driven her to step into the fire, knowing she'd get burned? Out of curiosity, I messaged her. We hadn't spoken since the initial fallout, and I wasn't sure if she'd even respond. But she did, almost immediately. She thanked me for reaching out and said she was glad to see me doing well. After some back and forth, I finally asked her the question that had been nagging at me: why did you decide to tell me the truth? Her response left me stunned. She admitted that her reasons weren't entirely selfless. Yes, she had felt a moral obligation to tell me what had happened, but there was more to it. She revealed that she and Emily had been close once, closer than I realized. But over time, she had watched Emily use people, manipulate them, and toss them aside when they no longer served her purpose. Vegas had been the breaking point. Rachel had seen Emily's behavior for what it was, and she couldn't stand by and let me walk into a marriage built on lies. I couldn't let her keep fooling you, she wrote. You deserved better. Her words struck a chord. Rachel hadn't just exposed Emily to punish her, she had done it to protect me. It was a bittersweet realization. Her actions had come at a cost, but they had also saved me from a future I didn't want to imagine. In the months that followed, Rachel and I stayed in touch. Our conversations were light at first, but over time, they grew deeper. She understood the scars Emily had left behind, not just because she had witnessed the betrayal, but because she had also experienced her own share of heartbreaks. One evening, during a casual phone call, Rachel said something that stayed with me: the people who shatter you aren't the ones who define you. It's the ones who help you pick up the pieces who matter. She was right. My story with Emily didn't end in flames and ruin. It ended in growth, in self-discovery, and in a renewed understanding of what I deserved. Emily's betrayal wasn't the end of my world, it was the beginning of a new one where I learned to value myself and surround myself with people who truly cared. And as for Rachel? Well, let's just say she became more than a friend. Sometimes, the worst moments of your life lead to the best people.